Serena Alchel, and this is Rockumentary Remix. In 1988, the charts were dominated by 70s rockers, big hair bands, and teeny bopper music. But then, rising up from the streets of Los Angeles, came Guns N' Roses. No pretty boys and hair everywhere you looked. They took high-energy hard rock back to the top of the pop music world, and at the time, it looked like they might stay there forever.
I hit L.A. with a backpack, a piece of steel in one hand, and a can of mace in the other. And then I rode all around Fullerton, thinking it was just the smallest city I had seen, and I would find Izzy. I rode the bus for like 2 days. Never found Izzy.
I just saw a picture of Izzy and Axl. I said, Slash, if we get these two guys and another bass player, we could have the best rockin' band.
We ran an ad for a heavy metal punk glam guitarist. Blues influenced. And Slash showed up and we said, nah. But he kept popping up everywhere we were at, and all of a sudden we started working together.
Then I moved to California, and I wasn't that good of a guitar player, really, to be like, because there's a million guitar players in LA. And then my drum kit was just, it was a piece of junk, you know? So I said, okay, I'll play bass, just to get my foot in the door. And this is the door I stepped into.
We were the only 5 guys that could have made up Guns N' Roses. I mean, we had different combinations of us in different bands, you know, throughout the time we were coming up and getting it together. We couldn't, there was nobody else in LA we could have played with, so it was inevitable that the 5 of us would get together because that was it. I mean, there was no other combinations that were going to work. And eventually, you know, there was enough people that had known us over the years that we were able to have a following and go in, and we worked our way up. We started Tuesday, then a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday. As soon as we got to Saturday nights, we were headlining, you know. And so then a year of headlining, we were signed.
On August 29th, 1987, Guns N' Roses released Appetite for Destruction, a dark, violent album with explicit lyrics and controversial topics. Against all odds, Appetite went to #1 on the charts and sold over 12 million copies worldwide.
I think that's why we're doing so well, because we're sort of like a shot in the eye for the rock, you know, for rock and roll. You know, we're not trying to promote, you know, drug abuse or anything like this. It's very scary. I mean, it almost killed us. It almost broke this band up. It's almost, you know, it killed a few of us a couple times. We were more prepared to fight to the death and go down in flames than to make it. We were going to do anything to make it. We were ready, you know, with our own morals and values, we were just ready to fight to the death for it. Thing is everybody we had seen on the majority of bands that we had grown up around had gone down in flames or, you know, ended up breaking up and stuff without being, like, financially successful in the business. And then all of a sudden, we did succeed financially and everything. I think we were more unprepared for that than anything.
I met Slash, I was at a little elementary school riding my skateboard. Just this kid on a skateboard went flying one day. I fell off and hit my head on the ground. It was a good 7-foot drop, too. The ground came rushing up to meet him at such a pace. I was like, oh, this guy's got to be wounded. And he said, are you all right? And I said, yeah. That was right before we ditched the entire 7th grade together. And then after the class was over, we got together and sang King Tut on the 3rd floor railing of the school, right on the edge of the little railing. And the teacher came out and freaked, and we were friends ever since. That's how we met, and we've been friends ever since. I had a guitar and a little amp, and I invited him over, brought him in my grandmother's bedroom, showed him with 1 chord and 1 scale, put my Kiss record on, did all my Ace Frehley positions. A friend of mine's dad used to call me that whenever I came over, my best friend. I used to come over and he'd go, hey, Slash, and it just sort of like stuck. Axl came along as the name of the band. My friend used to write down, my friend Dave Lank wrote down names of bands. Him and Mike Staggs and Roger Miley. And we always thought of names of bands, and he had this page of like hundreds of names they thought of for names of bands. One day they called me up and they said, got a name for a band, Axl, and like, I don't know. War was coming down on me in my house, and it's like, I answered the phone, and I was like, what do you want? He goes, we got a name for a band, Axl, how should we spell it? And I was like, AXL, click. I always had, from what I can remember, I always had a real fascination with it, you know. It was just, I loved the environment, and I loved the people, and I loved equipment, you know, and things to mess around with, and like, anytime we go to rehearsal, I'd be on the drum set or a guitar, any of that stuff I've always had an affection for.
We had the Bailey Trio. Me, my brother, and sister, and we worked out 3-part harmonies, and we'd get up in front of church and we'd sing like some gospel hit of the 70s, a little bit more rocked out than the actual hymns, you know, but I was like the bass then. You know, I was like, one more time, Jesus, lift my heavy burden. It was so much fun. It was really weird to think about that. We looked so geeky.
My mom tried to get me to take piano lessons, which I couldn't stand. And it didn't last very long. And I think I played a harmonica recorder, you know, that flute-like thing, in 5th grade or something, which I wasn't really into either. A little bit too lightweight an instrument.
My family is a pretty musical family also, so I'm the last of 8 kids, you know. So basically, it's like my mom just said, just do whatever you want to do. So I did it. Welcome to the jungle. We got money. We got everything you want to have. We know when it's coming. We'll keep on back to back. Whatever you need. If you got the money, honey, we got your disease in the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Won't you bring it down?
He'll be very quiet and stuff most of the time, and really won't let a lot of himself out until he picks up the guitar. And then his heart and soul seems to pour out through the guitar.
Life on the road gets a little hairy when we return.
I want to be back on the road so bad.
I'm not bragging or anything, but something about we can turn a Coliseum into a club, you know? I don't know what it is, but that's what happens.
And we generate a weird type of excitement. I mean, Izzy put it best, when you're doing a ballad and people are killing each other in a crowd, like in Weedsport, New York, beating the crap out of each other, something's wrong. We don't really understand it. We like the energy, you know, and everybody likes to see a good barroom brawl or something. But when it turns into such a mess, I mean, a barroom brawl is a movie. It's not real life.
There's some fierce stuff happening there, you know? It's a lot of pain and a lot of violence, you know? When we get together, there's a lot of violence and you know, it's just a lot of stuff. We've lost a lot of friends. Last couple of years together, all of our, you know, we've lost some friends.
I'll let them know.
You know, it's a lot of stuff we've gone through together, and we get on stage, all 5 of us together, it comes out.
The rest of the band will bounce back quicker after a show. And Steven, you know, runs the dressing room, wants pizza, and he's out to find the girls and everything. It's like, I need about an hour to pull my head back together. Because every song I sing, when I'm singing it, at the same time I'm like dealing with the crowd and stuff, I'm also thinking about the situation when I wrote the song, which could be 9 years ago, and where that person is now. All this stuff's going through your head like a million miles an hour.
We toured for like a year before the album broke. So, when it broke, I mean, it broke. And we were on the road, and it was just weird, you know? It's weird. We'd get back on the bus. Our album's #1.
I mean, for a bunch of kids to come off Sunset Boulevard and then end up on the road and then turn into like one of the biggest bands in the country, you know, which wasn't overnight, but the actual success part happened so quick. It was such a mind blower, and especially when we got off the road and you're recognized everywhere, and you go into a record store, you go to a gas station, and people recognize you in your car, you know, and all that stuff. It's a real shock.
I knew what I knew until I was 23. Now I've learned a whole new life in 2 years. A whole different life, you know? So it's just dealing with that is just kind of weird. I'm not complaining, you know, but it's weird. It's like cramming 8 years of college into, you know, a week.
If he thinks that's tough, we're going to cram 8 years of Guns N' Roses into the next 10 minutes. So brace yourself.
That Axl Rose's 1-month-long marriage to Erin Everly was on the rocks.
Rose had slipped off to Las Vegas on April 28th to marry Everly, who's the daughter of Don Everly of the Everly Brothers, and was a featured face in the Guns N' Roses video for Sweet Child of Mine. Guns N' Roses drummer Steven Adler left the band this week in the middle of recording sessions for the group's next album. Adler's replacement is California drummer Matt Sorum from The Cult.
Look at all this tension. God, I feel needed and wanted.
Axl Rose, who was arrested at his Los Angeles apartment in the wee hours of Tuesday morning after a run-in with his next-door neighbor.
I live next door to a psycho.
For Guns N' Roses, the group and its opening act, Skid Row, recently brought their tour to the Deer Creek Music Center in Noblesville, Indiana, and ran right into an 11 p.m. curfew for all weeknight concerts. The show easily exceeded that arbitrary limit, and Guns frontman Axl Rose reportedly delivered a 5-minute tirade questioning the curfew in the strongest possible terms. Local authorities were miffed, apparently, and levied a $5,000 fine. But on Wednesday, they did unleash a new video for You Could Be Mine, a song off the soundtrack of the upcoming Arnold Schwarzenegger film Terminator 2.
Police in the St. Louis suburb of Maryland Heights are blaming Axl Rose for a riot which broke out Tuesday night at the Guns N' Roses show at the Riverport Amphitheater. The fracas resulted in at least 60 injuries to police and fans, 16 arrests, and reportedly over $1 million worth of damage to the brand new amphitheater. It's only the second concert ever to be held there. According to police reports and eyewitness accounts, about an hour into the show, Rose spotted a fan in the front row taking photos of him and got upset. Cameras are not allowed into the amphitheater. Rose reportedly yelled several times for security to stop the fan from taking pictures. When they failed to respond, Rose announced that he would get the guy himself and then jumped into the crowd and allegedly pummeled the fan. Venue security jumped in to pull Rose off the fan. Then Guns N' Roses security jumped in to pull them off Rose. Axl eventually made it back to the stage, announced, "Thanks to your lame-ass security, I'm going home," and left the stage. The rest of the band played on for a few seconds, then left when they realized Axl was gone for good. The house lights stayed down for 10 minutes as the crowd booed, and when the house lights came up, some 2,000 of the 20,000 fans began to rush the stage. Along the way, the fans assaulted security and police officers, destroyed seating, ripped up turf, and then took to the stage, attacking or walking off with Guns N' Roses' gear.
Rose was limoing to a concert at the Los Angeles Forum, where Guns N' Roses are winding up their current U.S. tour, when his driver, after being directed to make a left, was stopped and given a ticket for making an illegal turn. Rose was apparently so upset about this by the time he reached the venue that he threatened to cancel the show. Management, mindful of the riot that occurred at a gun show outside of St. Louis a month ago, begged police to take the ticket back and serve it later, and they agreed to do so. Rose did take time on stage to berate former Guns drummer Steven Adler, who's now suing the band, and to accuse the audience of being tired and lazy. An earlier show at the nearby Pacific Amphitheater last week had ended abruptly during an encore rendition of a new song called Estranged. Rose, apparently not satisfied with the way the tune was being played, told the band to start it again. A few seconds after they did, he walked off stage. One fan at that show told LA Times writer Robert Hilburn that, quote, Axl's act is getting tired. Among other rude things, Rose charges that Spin publisher Bob Guccione Jr., Hit Parader editor Andy Sesher, and Circus Magazine have printed lies instead of the things we said, and he threatens to, quote, kick their asses. Guccione, following in the footsteps of Motley Crue singer Vince Neil, quickly issued a press release saying he's ready to duke it out with Rose and noting that he's studied karate.
More bad hair days for Guns N' Roses right after this.
It was apparently a wise move on the part of Geffen Records to ship a reported 4 million copies of the Guns albums, because at 12:01 Tuesday morning, the fans were on hand to start buying them. The frenzy was slightly muted in St. Louis, the site of a riot following a gun show last July in which the band's equipment was destroyed. The Use Your Illusion liner notes contain a 2-word insult to the town, which prompted a local radio station to round up as many angry citizens as it could to respond in kind.
They're nasty, you know, they annoy everybody, but that's, you know, that's rock and roll.
The sticker, which has the air of a direct communication from the group, says, quote, this album contains language which some listeners may find objectionable. They can F off and buy something from the New Age section. Former Guns drummer Steven Adler, who was fired from the band last year for alleged heroin addiction, is now back with a new group fronted by singer Davey Vane, formerly with an LA glam band called Vane. The new group is called Road Crew and is currently at work on demo tapes to shop around in search of a record deal.
Guns N' Roses abruptly canceled a concert in Chicago when it seemed likely that police, acting on behalf of authorities in St. Louis, would arrest lead singer Axl Rose on a standing warrant. GNR subsequently canceled 2 shows in Detroit this week for the same reason.
The difference between him and any other fugitive is that because of his public schedule, we know where he's going to be and when he's going to be there.
Guns N' Roses has been on the road for almost a year now, and during that time the band underwent a drastic change.
He decided he wanted to leave and go do his own thing. And we had like 2 weeks to find somebody.
2 weeks to learn like 40-plus songs. 2 weeks.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. What happened? The prosecutor reneged on a promise he made. I'm going there on the 15th, and he said this wouldn't happen, and he lied.
You gonna be out soon?
I think so.
After 3.5 hours at the Queens Courthouse, Rose was released on $100,000 bail and an agreement that he would finally fly back to St. Louis this week, as he'd already planned to do. We jumped into a limo with him for an exclusive interview on the way back to his hotel in Manhattan and asked him how he'd been treated in jail. What do they do when they put you in jail? Did you have a cell by yourself, or were there other people? Did you get to talk to any other inmates or anything?
No, I basically spent my time writing autographs for cops and talking with them about rock and roll.
But no prearranged deal was in sight when Rose walked into a St. Louis courtroom on Tuesday afternoon, and he wound up having to plead not guilty to 4 misdemeanor assault charges and 1 count of misdemeanor property damage. He was allowed to remain free on $100,000 bail, but advised not to get into any further trouble during the Guns N' Metallica tour, and to be back in St. Louis on October 13th for a trial on all charges.
I don't see anybody else taking any responsibility for anything. I'm saying, yeah, I jumped off stage, and yeah, things went haywire after that, and maybe I could have handled it better or whatever, but no one was really handling anything at that point.
Singer Axl Rose abruptly terminated a Guns N' Roses show at the New Jersey Meadowlands on Wednesday night after being hit in the crotch by a lighter thrown from the audience. On Tuesday, Rose was sentenced in absentia to 2 years probation to be monitored in Los Angeles, where he lives, and also advised that if he gets in any more trouble, he could face up to 4.5 years in jail. Rose also agreed to give $50,000 to various St. Louis area child abuse charities.
Guns N' Roses shut down its show at the Arco Arena in Sacramento, California last weekend, 90 minutes into its set after bassist Duff McKagan was knocked unconscious by a water-filled plastic bottle thrown from the audience. Before the show ended, though, Rose got in a few verbal licks at GNR's one-time tour mates Metallica, especially lead singer James Hetfield, whom Rose called a racist.
Hot on the heels of a lengthy world tour, Guns N' Roses are back with their epic new video, Estranged, which is supposed to complete the trilogy with November Rain and Don't Cry. And they've just released the long-awaited album of cover tunes, mysteriously titled The Spaghetti Incident.
Word spread of the unlisted track on the band's new album, The Spaghetti Incident, that was recorded by 60s murder cult leader Charles Manson. Rose, who sometimes wears a jokey Manson t-shirt in concert, said he simply liked the song's lyrics, but it was unlisted on the album because the group didn't want to play it up, and that he realized that Manson, now serving a life sentence in a California prison, was a, quote, sick individual. Guns N' Roses are back on the scene, in a way, with a jet-propelled cover of the old Rolling Stones hit Sympathy for the Devil on the soundtrack of the new Tom Cruise movie Interview with the Vampire. The band is also promoting another new release, the world's loudest pinball machine.
It's definitely a hit game. Plus, it's the first game that's ever had real guitars. It's also the loudest one made to date, you know. So I'm really proud of it.
Slash has been busy with his side project, Snake Pit, a reference to his fondness for the slithery creatures. The eclectic group consists of Slash on guitar, ex-Guns rhythm guitarist Gilby Clarke, Alice in Chains bassist Mike Inez, Guns drummer Matt Sorum, and Jellyfish guitarist Eric Dover on vocals.
And in news from the world of Axl Rose, the Guns frontman had been headed to court with his ex-girlfriend model Stephanie Seymour. She charged that he hit her, and he seemed to recall that she hit him. In the end, the sundered couple decided this week to spare the legal system another infusion of celebrity drama. They settled quietly out of court. 5 years after the band's last major release, the members of Guns N' Roses were thought to have regrouped and started rehearsing. However, in a fax sent to MTV News late Tuesday night, but aimed, he says, at his bandmates, singer Axl Rose announced the guitarist Slash is out of the group. As far as the rest of the group was concerned, apparently, Guns N' Roses were back together and back in action.
Well, I've been back in Guns N' Roses for the last 3 weeks. So we're just, like, just writing stuff and reacquainting each other with each other.
But Axl's fax, addressed from Burning Hills, California, with what he bewilderingly calls a dive-in-and-find-the-monkey attitude, announces that unless the band gets its act together, at least by his lights, there will be no more Guns N' Roses tours, websites, videos, merchandise, or even a fan club. However, since Axl Rose owns the name Guns N' Roses, there will be a new Guns album out, with or without present personnel, next summer. 12 new album tracks minimum, plus 3 new B-sides for singles. The harshest part of Rose's missive, however, concerns Slash, whose guitar has been a key component of the classic Guns sound. But his relationship with Axl has always been a bit strained, apparently. In his fax, Axl says Slash hasn't been musically involved in Guns N' Roses since April of 1994, and hasn't been a part of the band's business partnership since last December 31st. Rose then calls upon McKagan and Sorum to renounce what he calls the pseudo-studio musician work ethic. According to Guns N' Roses sources, Axl Rose wants the band's music to grow and evolve, and he felt Slash was committed to the group's old, now classic sound. In a statement to MTV News, Slash said, quote, "Axl and I have not been capable of seeing eye to eye on Guns N' Roses for some time. We recently tried to collaborate, but at this point, I'm no longer in the band. I'd like to think we could work together in the future if we were able to work out our differences."
Axl is said to be active in the recording studio right now, but as for any finished music, we are still waiting. Meanwhile, the group's former members have all been recording and touring with their own bands.